There are some traditions that I want to hang on to. There are a few.
Transcend and include.
Yeah.
Transcend and include.
I love it. Yeah.
It's both.
Yeah. So, have you, I assume you've been in bars and heard that song Closing Time at the end of the night.
I knew, you didn't even, I know exactly. Are you ready?
All good? Okay. All right. It's 11:28. We got a couple of minutes. So, okay. I think we'll be okay. Kind of get through the financials are okay. You know what I kind of figured out was the $400,000 number also like the amount you have in like the money markets, the checking account, the Grace. That includes $80,000 that's in the academy. Money market, but that's no.
I separated that.
Well, so really, it's only $327,000. That $400,000 was, but the academy is just allocated to the academy. Right? I mean,
correct. It's all on.
It's all on. Okay.
But we allocate it to the academy because that's so they can run what they're doing. Okay. Plan ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. Because I looked at that this morning, and I'm like, maybe we're not that clear.
And the other thing I'm noticing is that's perfect height for me, so I can just stand next to you.
Yeah, there we go. All right. One more minute and we'll get going. This is what I'm kind of going to say. I was trying to get thoughts together on how you and I...
Do you want me to take that?
I'll take it. That's fine. No, that's fine. I can take it. I want you to be comfortable with it, though. I don't know if I'll get that far into it.
What you're saying is true.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. All right, everybody ready? The question is really, am I ready? Maybe. All right, let's get some donuts, get some coffee. Thank you, Kevin, for picking up the donuts, I believe, right? So welcome to the rest of the annual meeting. As Father Chris says, here in the Episcopal Church, we start the annual meeting with worship, and so you saw that at our 10 o'clock service. Thank you all for being there. And so we'll get on to the more perfunctory part of the annual meeting, I guess. So welcome. We'll start with our mission statement. I told you, every time. Welcome to the transformative power of Christ's love. If you're here, you belong. The reason it's important to repeat this over and over again is because the idea of a mission statement is that you run everything you do as a community that has a mission statement through that mission statement. And so if it seems like we're repeating ourselves, we are. There's a reason. Year in review. It was a challenging year. The pandemic continued. We were flexible. We opened up. We gathered for worship and social events. We had some great social events there at the Rally for Grace at the end of the summer. We had a couple of more gatherings here in the parish hall during the fall that were wonderful. And then we had to draw back again. Safety is paramount. And we have a lot of conversations between Nick and Chris and I about how we treat safety here. You'll notice that we were flexible about masks, about how we gather. Hopefully that's appreciated. I don't know that anybody really likes masks, but sometimes they are a necessary part of keeping our community safe. So thankfully we're now into a part of the pandemic, which is hopefully endemicity. Is that a word? So it is now, right? So. And hopefully we won't be needing to go back there, but if we do, we will. It's important and critical to keep you safe. And so now we move forward. The year ahead, and a little bit of gratitude first. Our Alco Investor class is Tom Kern, Ann Sprague, and Christy White. You heard me refer to them. They have been incredibly dedicated, wonderful members. Yes, absolutely. A round of applause. They all had sort of unique roles on the vestry. Tom was very involved in everything you see here with the plant, and making sure that things were done around. He was really the vestry liaison. Anne is on the giving committee. I say is. She's on the giving committee. She's also very involved in Spirited Women. And Christy was a great liaison with the academy and everything we do in Christian education, as well as being very involved in Spirited Women. So that's just like a snapshot of how involved they were. We'll miss them. We're very excited about our new vestry class, which we just seated. Jill Nimo, Sarah Clary sitting there together, and also Anna Ferguson in absentia, but has assured me that she is tuned in. So we're really excited about this class. Each of them also bring very unique talents, which we'll put to work. You see the class of 2023 and the class of 2024. I think I speak for Nick when I say this is a really exciting vestry class to take us forward into some challenging but also adventuresome times. And so Nick and I, our senior warden and junior warden, we've been asked to stay on for another year. You may be wondering about the succession plan for wardens. I too am wondering about the succession plan for wardens. So I think Polly and Allison probably as well. But we're happy to serve, but we just have been talking about it, and in the context of letting go, we need to let go as well. We both love this place, but we've both served in really unique times. Nick longer than I have, through a pandemic and sort of an adjustment to what we had. It's like a whack-a-mole sort of thing. Chris has used the whack-a-mole analogy. You're just always kind of putting out fires, and it doesn't really give us a chance to really implement what we might want to do in terms of leadership. And so we've developed sort of this leadership style, and it's probably best that we find some more folks to come in and take us into the next phase. We'll be here for a year, but we will be discerning the next set of wardens. Fairly warned be ye. So
yeah, just and Mike, he's got the mic, so I have to cozy up next to him. Yeah, we've asked several people along the way and they're all really, really smart and said no. And so it's not for lack of trying, and it's an interesting time. It has been, and Mike did a phenomenal job this past year, largely by himself, because I did try to step away this past year as much as I could.
Deserved.
But we've got so much going on. We need two wardens fully engaged. So it's the Nick and Mike show for one more year, and hopefully somebody else is willing to step up next year.
We're taking applications.
But it's the other part of it is it's not just us. It's everybody here and everybody here. And I'm going to echo what you said in your reflection, which is exactly right. There's an action that's going to be needed to help manifest and go into this adventure that we have together. It takes everybody. So, Mike, it's not about titles and it's senior, junior, whatever. We're all here and we're all helping. So It doesn't really matter as long as we're here working together.
Agreed.
Right?
Well put. Well put. All right, so financial report. 2021 looked a lot like 2020. Revenue was down, but so were expenses. The PPP loan was once again critical, but covered up a serious revenue shortfall. We've talked about that for the last couple of years. This is not going to be a surprise to anybody in this room that the PPP loan was extremely helpful in covering up a pretty serious revenue shortfall. And we hope, again, that there will be no PPP loan this year. If there's another PPP loan this year, things have gone wrong in a lot bigger way than Grace Church. So that being said, the 2022, it's not going to be pretty from a budget perspective, and we're about to jump into the budget. I'll put the budget up here in a second. One thing just for guidance, I didn't put out printed copies of the budget for two reasons. One, I forgot. Two is that I find that when everybody clears out and I eat all the donuts that nobody finished at the end of the meeting, that we find a lot of them just sort of lying around. So in the interest of just sort of conserving paper for a myriad of different reasons, if you would like a copy of the budget or the financials, we try to remember to put them in Grace Notes once a month, sometimes better than others. But if you want them, contact me, contact Nick. We're in the book. You saw our emails, and I'm happy to get anyone who wants a copy. So this year, go ahead.
Well, let's just try, when you mention it, we'll try to make sure we get an email out with it this week, so that
Yeah.
everybody gets it, because everybody's gonna wanna see what's going on
Right.
with this year's budget.
Right.
Sure.
So, okay, so again, no PPP loan, and a break-even budget is going to become a significant deficit this year. This year, we can cover the deficit out of cash reserves, which is good. We will not have to go into the endowment. I think a lot of churches probably have had to go into endowments. We are fortunate that we have some cash reserves that will be able to cover a significant deficit. Revenues need to increase. The Giving Committee mission is to diversify and increase revenue streams, and that's going to be something we're going to be focused on this year. Got a great Giving Committee, really some great minds, and anybody who wants to participate in the Giving Committee, again, we're taking applications, but we're going to try to get different revenue streams aside from just such a focus on annual committed giving. So here we go. Bear with me. I need to make sure I can, whoops, nope, that's not where I wanted to go. We'll get there. Okay. Okay, can everybody see that? Let me, maybe this is why I should have been a little better about, how about that? Okay. All right, I'm going to try to stand to the side here without screwing anything up too terribly. So typical budget, you guys see this every year, and so we start with our revenues and general offerings. So you can see here that pledged offerings are about $455,000. That's about even with last year. As you know, we set a goal of, oh, nice. There we go. Excel. I'm a recovering lawyer. I don't know anything about Excel. So $455,000, that's where we ended up, about where we were last year. We had higher hopes and fell short. So I think there's a couple of different reasons. And one of them is probably we could get things going a little earlier. And the Giving Committee will be getting our annual committed giving campaign going earlier this year. Will that make up the difference between a $455,000 number and a $625,000 goal? No, it won't come close. So we're going to be figuring out how to ramp up our pledged offerings. Of course, the easiest way to ramp up pledged offerings is to get more people to come into church and attract more people, more families. I was so gratified to see so many families this morning. It was fantastic. We need more of that, so tell your neighbors, tell your friends, and our job is to make sure that we're reaching out into the community and letting them know what we do here at Grace Church and how they can be a part of it. Prior year pledges, that's just a function of some things that we have to collect from the end of last year. Non-pledged offerings have consistently gone up. Nick, do you want to speak to non-pledged offerings and why they've gone up? Or, yeah.
They've gone up for a lot of different reasons, and this is a trend that I've been seeing the entire time I've been on the vestries. Every year, less and less of a percentage of our money comes in through committed giving, and more of it comes in through the just other. People come in and just write a check, and people give more than their pledge, which is wonderful. And it's a lot of it is people that are not yearly givers, and they give anyway, or they come to the church for the first time and they give out of spirit of generosity and engaging with the church. And every single year it goes up. This year might have been a little bit different because a lot of people for 2021, when they committed, They committed less just because of the uncertainty with respect to the pandemic. But they all said, hey, you know, but if things go well, I'll still give what I usually give. And I think there were a few people in that category that bumped the 61,000 number up a little bit. So I think in a couple of years now, we've been pushing this non-committed giving like 10,000 a year.
Yeah.
So this year's a little bit of a smaller bump, but it's a trend. And that, again, that goes back to the giving committee and living into the fact that in terms of collecting the revenues that pay the bills, it's not entirely about committed giving anymore. It's about all the different ways we engage and making sure we're in a posture to receive in every way we engage.
Yeah, well put. Thank you. So you get down to a total general offering number there, and then we get into special offerings. Special offerings are really sort of based on historical performance. I can't remember what the saying is. Past performance is no indication of future, but we do it anyway. And feel pretty comfortable with all these numbers. I should step back here for just a second. This is a conservative budget, meaning that we're not counting on a lot of bluebirds coming in. We're not counting on any bluebirds coming in. This is a budget that really tries to take into account everything that could happen on the downside and tries to be realistic on what can happen on the upside. We really hope this is a worst case scenario.
Right, yeah, I just to add a little color to that, when you make a budget, how many of you, lots of you have made budgets, and every time you kind of, there's a little bit of wiggle room here, I could tweak this up or tweak this down. This budget, we kind of intentionally tweaked our revenues down and expenses up, just a little bit, so that we had a sense of what our worst case scenario is. So keep that in mind when you get to the end, that there's a fair possibility that we're gonna beat that. But it's a question of how much, and we needed to be real. This was a time to be as realistic with ourselves as possible as to what a worst case scenario could be. So just have that in mind.
And realistic with you. So you see other general income, again, the academy allocation is something that's the same every single year. And a lot of these numbers here, if anybody has specific questions, happy to field them. One thing that is going up a little is the building use 108, that's the parsonage. Pastor Katie has renewed the lease for 2 years with a caveat. For 1 year, which is through February 28th, 2023. And then after that, it's going to become month to month. They are endeavoring into home ownership. So they're looking to buy a home. It might work out actually pretty well, them going month to month at the same time as, we'll talk about timing with Father Chris in a minute, but it may actually work out pretty well to have them moving out at a time when we'll be calling our next rector and perhaps a place for an interim to stay. That's what's going on there. We up it every 2 years, or every year it goes up by $100 a month. So you see that number goes up a little. And then the other thing that I'll say is, please don't ask me to get too far into employee retention credits. Just know that the employee retention credits are something that Keith Manor has made us aware of, and Keith and Tara have been working together. It's sort of a vestige of the PPP loan, where you'll get some credits from the IRS for the keeping employees on. And so that number is probably actually going to be 30,000. But again, to Nick's point, we've kind of kept that lower. If you have technical questions about the employee retention credit, you are barking up the wrong tree. But I am assured by our treasurer that it's fine. Some of the rest of these are revenue that comes in and is offset by other expense items down below. So YMO mission is a good example of that. We'll fund $20,000 into the YMO mission. The kids will make up the other $10,000, and it's a $30,000 expense. So you'll see a $30,000 expense below. Holiday Market, we're absolutely thrilled that Holiday Market is going to come back this year. Other fundraising, this number here, we had a great fundraiser this year. We're planning on doing another fundraiser of some kind. We don't know what that looks like yet. It could be a golf outing, could be something else. But this is a net number. So when we go down and you see a bunch of expenses associated with last year's Rally for Grace and the other things that we did, and then don't see us accounting for it, that's because this number is net. So we just didn't put the expenses down below, and that represents just the profit from an event. Stop me anytime if you have questions, by the way. The vestry transfer, I think you all know that the endowment transfers 5% each year. That is coming in on a quarterly basis. The reason it comes in on a quarterly basis is because if we keep the balance in the endowment over $3 million, there's a material difference in fees. So we bring it in quarterly, hope the market continues to be good to the endowment. I think it's around 3.5, it might be a little lower after last week, but our endowment's about $3.5 million. Did you want to?
Just to note, because it's a formula, you can see how much it's gone up over time. So the endowment has grown quite a bit the last 3-4 years. And so that's a wonderful asset to have in our back pocket. And as Mike said, we don't want to touch it unless we have to. And we may. We may discern a time when we need to invest in X or Y, and that's why that's there. But luckily, as Mike said, it's been growing. We've been able to stay above that $3 million mark, which does help. So it's something that we have that a lot of churches don't, at least not to the size that we have in ours. So it's really good.
Yeah, and I should mention Frank Cyber, who has done wonderful work as the chair of the endowment committee, is going to be turning over the endowment committee to Sarah Timms, which we could not be more pleased about as well. She's awesome, super bright, and gets all of what we're trying to do, as did Frank. So that's another transition that I didn't put in the next slide. But so total revenues, $865,000, give take. Again, it's a budget, but that's where we ended up. I don't know why the vestry columbarium income we budgeted $751. I'll fix that. It's probably $750. So. As we head down here to both clergy and lay salary and benefits, we did do a 5% COLA increase this year across the board for everyone. That was obviously everybody, unless you're living under a rock, you're aware that inflation has been going up. I couldn't believe how much I paid for a rack of ribs the other day, but anyway, we felt it. We did what we could, to tell you the truth. In a tight situation, we did what we could to hopefully lessen the pain of the inflation increase.
Yeah, and just to give a little bit of history there, we have not done cost of living increases every year. And so there's some sense of some of our staff have been left behind a little bit. So even though this was kind of a tough budget year with the inflation the way it is, and all the great work that our staff does, including our clergy, we couldn't not. It wouldn't be right. And so we really felt like that was something we had to do for no other reason, just out of appreciation for everything that our staff does for us.
Yeah, well put. And I think we're going to continue to, that's not what the COLA number was. It was what we could afford to do. So we're going to be keeping our eye on that, and hopefully if things turn out better, that's one of the first places we'll continue to sort of make up. Tim?
The lay salaries, the decrease there are $63,000.
Yeah, so here's what's happening with the lay salaries. We are going to combine the communications director position and the church administrator position. Unfortunately, that's just something that we have to do from a budget perspective. We're going to be looking for a new position that combines the communication director and the staff administrator. It's never easy to do these things, but you're going to see a bottom line number that says, it's hard. It's hard to say, and it's hard to say goodbye. Again, that's another issue.
Who are you replacing?
We are replacing Sherry, and we'll also replace Sheila. So those are tough decisions that have to be made. Combining those into one position, what we're looking for, and again, you're all our best recruiters, what we're looking for is perhaps a student or somebody just out of college to come in with a lot of sort of social media savvy a lot of administrative capabilities. One of the important parts of it is managing Chris's calendar. So that's another skill that we'll need. We're working on the position description sort of almost as we speak, and I think one of the things that we're going to try to do is go out to colleges here locally and get on the job boards and see if we can't find someone that way. We get a lot of resumes from a source like Indeed, but they tend to be people who are used to being paid handsomely, and so it makes it tough. Is that?
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that, part of this is a large part of the communication bit is just keeping up with the emails and all of that, and so we don't necessarily need somebody with years and years of experience to handle that piece. And part of the reason why I think this would be an attractive job for someone out of college is that we have a small staff, and if you want to get to know what a nonprofit looks like and what a small church looks like from an admin side, this is an unbelievable opportunity to come in here and get involved in just about everything. And that's what we need in our staff, is someone who's going to be super flexible and willing to learn and do all sorts of different things. Because we have a staff of 3 after this. We have Tara, who's our admin, who does the financials. Part of her salary is paid by the academy. We have David, who's our full-time sexton. Part of his salary is paid by the academy. And then this new person outside of our worship ministry. So you want to talk about getting your hands dirty in all things nonprofit. This is, I think, an attractive thing for someone young that can bring a lot of energy into it.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we're thinking about it from that way.
A couple of other things. We're very grateful and lucky to have Allison Peters to step into the breach while we are filling this position. She's done it before. She does a wonderful job, and we're very, very fortunate. The second thing is that there are parts of what happens around here that can be filled by volunteers. And we're trying to figure out how that looks. But for example, we staff a desk out front during the week. That's not necessarily something that has to be filled by, that can be filled by somebody who's an employee. They go through training, they have to go through certain, go through a certain actual required certification, which isn't difficult. But if anybody's interested in that, let us know. I mean, it's maybe a few hours a week, but it's a way that we can use volunteers to step in where previously we've had a paid position. I mean, this is just where we are, and this is the sort of thinking that we need to have around these issues. This is tough. This is not the fun part of what we do as wardens or as the rector. So does anybody have any other questions? I want to make sure we cover that. Dirk?
Are we in that transition period yet, or are these 2 people still on staff?
So Sheila has left, and Sherry is transitioning out.
Sherry's going to stay. Sherry's going to stay until we get the next person in place. And we need her. We're going into Lent and heading into Easter week. We can't have no staff heading into that and gearing up for missions and all of that. And Sherry's really good at a lot of that stuff. And so Sherry will stay on until we find the right person.
I have 2 questions. In round numbers, your revenue for 2022 budget, how does that compare to pre-COVID 2019 or 2020? Just round numbers.
So great question.
I'll take that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pre-COVID, we were right around, when I first started, we were in that 1.1 range in terms of revenue. So it's a
50 grand less or so?
150, 200. I'd say more like 2.
200?
Yeah.
How about number of pledging units? Is that also, is that declined?
Yes.
Yes, it was, we went from about 156 to what, 108?
108 in 2021, and this year I think about the same.
Yeah.
So significant reductions.
When we talk about not having to rely on committed giving. There you go. And people are engaging churches in different ways. I mean, that's the other thing. When we talk about transitioning, the model of come to church on Sunday, commit to giving X amount every year, putting it in the plate as you go throughout the year. People engage with the church in lots of different ways now. And a lot of them may not be Episcopalian, may not even be thinking about, oh, when I'm a part of a church, I have to have a committed giving. And that's where the giving committee really has to lean into, okay, if we're going to have an event where we have 50% people that don't come but maybe 2 Sundays a year, how are we engaging them and making sure they know about all the other things we do and we're in a posture to receive from them, right? So it's a new paradigm, and we're having to think about and grow with this, because just relying on committed giving is that's gone. It's just not going to be that way anymore.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a changing model, and we're working every day to try to see how we can reach out beyond our walls, to try to bring people in. That includes a really dynamic platform that the technology platform here is really state of the art. It's really, really impressive, and kudos to Chris for leading the charge on that, and kudos also to John Robinson. Thank you, John. Who has been absolutely phenomenal. And we need to learn how to better lever that platform into this. I mean, to be quite blunt about it, that's what we need to do. And we haven't cracked that nut. There are a lot of nuts that we have to crack, and that's what the giving committee is working on. That's what the vestry is working on. I'm confident we can do it. It's going to take a lot of effort, and it's going to take a lot of creative thought. But we've really got to expand out our revenue streams in order to get that number back up to where it needs to be. And pledging units, we'd love to see them come back up to, we need to set goals like adding X number of pledging units a year, and just being very statistics oriented about it, setting goals, saying, all right, let's add 10 pledging units this year, net. Let's add 10 pledging units the next year. I don't know if that's the number. I don't know if that's the magic number, but that's something we have to discern and be very intentional about and keep track of. What else? Okay. All right, so. Yeah.
How did we do with the rally day, the food trucks and so forth? Was that
Oh, it was great. Huge.
You got a plan to do that again?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about when we were up on revenues, and I said the $15,000 is a net number. I don't know what that is going to be, or we don't know what that is going to be, but we are going to try to plan another big fundraising event, and we don't know what that looks like yet. The suggestion was thrown out. We've done golf outings before that have been very successful.
Or a mix of events, right?
Or a mix of events, yeah.
It's hard, right? We can't keep coming back to the same community. By the way, we're in a posture of receiving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See, that's usually where all the Excel spreadsheets end up at the end of the meeting. So.
But it's tough, right? Because our community is smaller, and so there's only so many times we can go to this community and say, give more, give more, give more. And so it's a tough balance, right? We could have one really big event, or we could have one big event and a few smaller events. What does that look like? And that's what we're trying to figure out. It's a tough nut to crack, and creativity is going to be paramount.
Yeah, we've got some ideas. We've got to reconvene the giving committee this year. We've been in sort of holiday mode, and then just getting ready for the annual meeting and doing the transition with the vestry. But the giving committee, I was sitting in on the meetings, and they are doing a great job of being really creative about ways that we can roll out ideas for raising revenues. It's going to take kind of diving in and embracing a new paradigm of the way we give as a parish and as a community. So, okay, well, now we're down to expenses. Everybody clear on what we're doing staffing-wise? Some of these numbers, we go through each one. Building maintenance, it's again, you can see how we did it in a lot of these numbers going forward from here. Budgeted was 62, but we came in at 74. 74 was because there were about $5,000 worth of snow, right? So we just sort of excess snow. And so you land on a number that you hope is realistic, split the difference. Utilities, we have the expectation, especially now over the last week, that gas is going to cost a lot more. And so we've kicked that number up a little bit. Office expenses, you don't see too many reasons that they're going to go up. Administrative expenses, there's detail here that I will not go into, but there's reasons that we've come up with these numbers that are sort of generally where we've come out in the past, but maybe a little lower or a little higher this year. This number is significantly lower. That's what I was talking about. We put the expenses for the Rally for Grace into this number. And so that's why we just came out with one number up above that's a net number, whereas the actual included the expenses. So does everybody understand that okay, good. Because it took me a while to understand it, to be honest. And then, numbers that kind of come out for various reasons. Online presence and streaming, we've put a lot of money into it in the past. We think we're sort of past a lot of the upfront expenses with it, but there will be continuing expenses, software maintenance, that sort of thing. And there's always something that is, John's brilliant about improving our online capability. He really is. I mean, he sends these emails with these pictures of these things and then an explanation of what they do, and I'm like, God, it was so bad in physics. What is going on? Like, I don't... But he's just really, really devoted. We really cannot be more, we're very grateful. Outreach. So outreach is, of course, an important part of what we do. Again, very grateful for Dirk's work. Thank you, Dirk. Dirk has really set up a great platform for outreach, a great system. It's always good, Dirk and Suzanne and I and Nick are probably going to sit down in the next week and talk about what the platform looks like. The platform looks very, very good for outreach. It's organized. Everybody's got an understanding of what they're doing, and that's really half the battle. So Suzanne, we're very grateful, is going to take over as outreach lead for Dirk. And yeah, absolutely. So we are in excellent hands with outreach here at Grace Church. And what happens really in the structure is you kind of feed into Dirk and now Suzanne and say, there's team leaders for each different outreach initiative. And it really works very well. So
what's nice about that is that it's so open for growth. If you have an idea of engaging our community in a way that's going to expand our souls, come talk to Suzanne. And it's that simple. And we'll figure out how to support you. I mean, that's part of our mission, right?
Yeah.
We're transforming. Welcome to the transformational power of Christ's love. Well, if you find a way that we can demonstrate love in the community, let's talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be a key part of our growth. And so here you see, again, the partner support is always, we've actually pumped it up a little bit. Christmas baskets, everybody's familiar with that. YMO mission, so there's the $30,000, right? There's the $30,000 of expense that is taken care of by $20,000 contribution from the church and then $10,000 that the kids raise. I think I've got that right, Chris? And Holiday Market, excited to bring back Holiday Market, and so that nets out up above as well. So we go down here. Really the next thing that I want to highlight is Christian education. Christian education is really going to be a focus this year of the vestry. It's really, really super important that we hit the ground running with programs for youth. That includes YMO, that includes LIFT, adult education. We don't really think adults need to be educated all that much, and so that's what, no, I'm kidding. We probably need it more than anybody. That would probably be about 10 times that number. The Christian education includes a bunch of different things. Christian education includes $5,000 for bringing back nursery staff so that we can staff up the nursery on Sundays. It includes $9,000 for sort of a combination of the actual programming on Sundays. And then Nick's going to talk a little bit about this. The Christian Education Committee is going to explore a number of different ways that we can expand our offerings. Those can be anything from, a separate service that looks a little different. Kevin and I have talked about that to see if maybe there's a separate service that we can do on a Saturday night or something like that to attract, more people in. We're going to talk about whether a gradual expansion of the academy makes sense. That's an interesting idea as well. So everything in between that is on the table with how we interact with the youth in our community and how we try to attract people into the church. And then we've got, of course, a number here. Probably not going to hit that this year. It's probably way too high, to tell you the truth. Because we'll talk about the rector search in a minute, but that's probably not all going to happen this year. Actually, very little of that is probably going to happen this year. But we'll walk through that in a minute here. The music department is, yeah.
Can I just make a
Yes.
point about, for adult education, as it relates to, I think probably the men and the women, has usually been self-funded.
Right.
Everything that we do, books that we buy, we all buy them ourselves. And
Great
so
point.
I don't want that note of only $100 to discourage anybody from coming, but.
That's a great point.
The Lenten book is a $10 book, and we all buy our own books, and so we're self-funded. So it's very active, it just doesn't require a lot of the budget.
Great point. Thank you. Yeah, because all kidding aside, we do have some great adult education programs here. We're going to try to do more on the men's side of things, but try to actually catch up to the women. We never will, but we'll try. We'll try. So, music department. That's a full year budget. That's back to. And so the 20,000 last year reflected a lower pandemic number because the choir was not in. How wonderful is it to have the choir back? I mean, it's just such an amazing part of what we do, and so grateful for Andrew's ministry and the ministry of all the choir members and the choir leaders. So this reflects back in action in 2022, and I couldn't be happier. We all couldn't be happier. And then the vestry building maintenance number is the number that reflects 1/2 of the endowment contribution. So the endowment contribution can go for 3 different buckets in essence, and that is building maintenance, meaning longer term projects. It's not to buy light bulbs, it's to resurface driveways. It's to do some other, longer term. We're not going to get into a lot of, well, do we categorize this as a capital item or a non-capital item? It's just sort of items that will have a longer life within the church. And then the other 2 are outreach and also special projects. So if you didn't know that those are sort of the 3 buckets that are really what the endowment distribution is for, that's it. Are there any questions there? Because the endowment can tend to be a little bit of a mystery, but I want to, make sure we're transparent.
Do you expect to spend all that, or will some of that go into cash reserve?
So some of that has gone into cash reserves in the past. We haven't spent that all.
Last year is a perfect example. And the idea there is, a few years ago, we did have a study done. It was, I think, my first year as a warden. Alex was senior warden. And they gave us a long-term plan. And when you looked at it, it was like, when you spread it all out, we would need $70,000 a year over 15 years. So there have been years where we've spent right up to that 70. This last year, we came way short. That goes into our balance sheet. This year, we have a major ticket item, the driveway. So that's going to eat up pretty much all of that. And then we still have a little bit left over because every year something happens.
Yeah.
something breaks. We have we have this building, 108, and the rectory to maintain. And something always every year there's something that lands in the capital bucket.
Yeah.
So yes, we definitely do smoothing. That's why we have a nice balance sheet to be able to track all of that.
Yeah, appliances have, as everyone who is a homeowner or a renter or anyone who has an actual dwelling knows, appliances have a useful life. And it seems like one appliance at 108 and one appliance at 142 and one appliance here at Grace Church, the middle refrigerator this year, goes kaput. So those sorts of things are covered. All right.
With one note, the diocese support.
Yeah.
We talked to the diocese last year when we were really uncertain about budget. And they basically said, look, if you're going to be going into a deficit budget, you don't need to give to us. So as of right now, given the deficit budget, you're about 2 lines away from seeing, we haven't budgeted to give to the diocese. If things go great and everything, lots of things go right for us this year, that can go back on the table.
Yeah.
But for right now, we just don't have it.
Yeah, it's a great point. Great point. So the big reveal, that's our deficit. You'll notice that that deficit is roughly the amount of a PPP loan. And so we've talked about it, and for 2 years we've walked out of this room and said, all right, we got to get it together, and we've got to think about these revenue streams because the PPP loan is not always going to be there. Today's the day. The PPP loan is not there. So that's a scary number. And I think though it's a realistic high number. Hoping that that's going to be less. Really hoping maybe to be able to knock it down. I don't know.
Well, things
15 or
happen. So if you
20,000?
looked at last year, we ended up 46,000 in the black last year. So good things can happen. And really, it's the last 2 years we've been in the black because of the PPP loan. That's why we have the cash reserves this year to not have to go into the endowment. So we're kind of averaging out the pandemic. So we've got 1 year. We got 1 year
Yeah.
to get together and have an adventure together.
Figure
Find
out what the
something
adventure
that
looks like. Yep.
energizes everybody to make that number back to zero.
So when I talk about the cash balance, this is what I mean. These are our liquid cash accounts. This is our balance. This is from our balance sheet. So as of 12/31/21, we had about $413,000 in cash accounts. And you subtract out the restricted gifts from that number, it's about $100,000 because those restricted gifts have been earmarked for specific items. So, you have a cash balance of what was that, 413 minus 100? Somewhere around 300,000. That's why we can cover this deficit this year without going into the endowment. Obviously, nobody wants to make a habit of this. So there's work ahead. But I am now firmly probably into the category of beating a dead horse on this. You all get the picture. Does anybody have any questions before I move on to the next slide? Thank you for bearing with us. You're all still awake. That's awesome. That's awesome. I guarantee you there's people at home, so they've already flipped it off. When does the golf tournament start? Okay, so let me get out of here and back into the presentation. Bear with me. Okay, so here's where we were. Okay, transitions. Now, some fun stuff, right? We've talked about the communications director searching for a new communications director, what that position is going to look like. Again, really, really grateful. This is this is all Fisher all the time, right? This is fantastic. So, so Suzanne has agreed to take over for Dirk. Thank you again, Suzanne. And David has agreed to take over for Keith Manor. One highlight of how we're going to start treating vestry meetings and the treasurer position, we're going to go back to the treasurer filing a report and not necessarily needing to attend. You know, there'll be a conference, of course, between me and David and Nick before the vestry meeting to talk about anything that's of concern in the treasurer's report. But we're going to go back to a treasurer's report system. The idea behind the treasurer report, all right, this is a pitch for anyone who wants to become a warden, is that you don't have to do what I just did at every single vestry meeting. You can just throw out the report and people will have read it. I think that makes, I can tell you with certainty that that makes the warden position a lot more attractive. So just a pitch, taking applications. That's the first set of transitions, and of course, the big transition. You're probably wondering, if you haven't heard, what the timing is on Father Chris's retirement from Grace Church. April 2023 might be even a little too definite right now. It's spring 2023, call it, early summer 2023. I have an email into the diocese for Nick and I to sort of go visit with them and confirm the process, because this is something we haven't done for 11 years, which is great. It's a great stability gift that we've had for the last 11, and it'll be 12 years by the end. And just seems like a day, right, Chris? Just
like yesterday.
And so we've begun communications with the diocese to get our arms around the process. A lot of people who did that last time are gone. Tori Foster led our search the last time. Tori has moved downtown, but I will be calling him nonetheless. And so we'll establish a search team with the chair. So this is what I was talking about when I said that $5,000 number is probably a little too high. You don't call a new rector while the old rector is still here. So even though we know that Chris, we're closer to the end than the beginning, let's put it that way. Even though we know that, we're just going to get the process in place, do what we can prior to Chris leaving. Then we'll have an interim rector, which we had last time. And during that time, we will begin the process of calling a new rector. So that process is probably not going to begin in earnest, maybe till spring or summer of 2023, under the guidance of a new warden. I keep coming back to that. Anyway, does anybody have any questions on the rector transition process as I've described it here with very little information, because I don't have enough information? Okay, we're going to keep you all updated on that. It is obviously an incredibly important transition here at Grace Church. Nick, go.
Yeah, the good and bad here is we have a long time to celebrate the Pierces and everything they've done. I want to start with that.
Yep.
Because unbelievable leadership spiritually and at the academy to be where we are now relative to what I'm told Grace Church was 12 years ago. So it's basically going to be a year-long celebration of the Pierces. That's how I look at it. The second piece of it is it buys us time to really have everything together, so we're not having to scramble on day one when the Pierces leave. And so we have time to really go into this process, get it organized, and go forward. And we'll see what happens. That's a classic example of we need to be open to the Spirit and see where the Spirit leads us.
Yeah, it's a great point, because it's yet, I talked about it in my reflection, it's yet another great gift from the Pierces. They don't have to stick around for this long. This is, not only is it, the height of professionality, it's also a very loving gift to us that we have this kind of time to start to think and start to adjust and start to, get the process down so that when we do have to do this, we'll be prepared. So it's really fantastic. And of course, we are working with Julie to confirm the continuing academy success. That's going to be another conversation, and that's a great gift from Julie, right? For her to be here for another school year to talk about the direction of the academy and all the things that are going on there, to discern, obviously, a new academy director, which is not as, it's all part of one thing here at Grace Church. So finding that new director will be challenging, and again, we have a great gift of a year to do that. And I'm going to turn it over to Nick for the next slide. All right, let's
Leave that on. I'll
leave
just
this
get
on.
back to you.
Okay, sounds good.
So committees, I'd rather call it teams. We have a bunch of committees already that are teams that are working together to help in lots of different ways. So we have, Mike's referenced the Giving Committee multiple times. We have the property group, Jimmy Kingsfield's helping out with that, thank you. Finance, there's a small group of us that get together, thank you, Ann, that do keep an eye on the budget on a little bit deeper level, and have those kinds of conversations, and bring questions and concerns to the vestry. And technology and communications, obviously important because it's integral to what a church is today in terms of bringing our services and our worship out to the community. The biggest one is the new one, this Christian Education Committee. And one of the things that has always come up in all of our conversations about what do we do, how do we grow, what kind of services that can we bring to our community, and it constantly comes back to children. Today was awesome to have all those families there, and that's what we can grow into. Right there shows we haven't lost all our families, and we can launch with those families. So how do we do that? We've really taken a huge step back with the coronavirus and the pandemic, out of safety and out of concern. Well, now we have to grow back into that. And so we really do want to have a separate group of people singularly focused on how do we serve families, and what does that look like? What does that look like in the context of our services? What does that look like in the outside of the context of our services? And then the big one, we have thought about expanding our academy out to a K-5 program. And we would like to have a group of people look seriously at that, and see what that looks like for us. Because what an amazing way to continue to serve the children of this community. There's lots of positives to that, lots of negatives to that. We're going to look into that and discern what that looks like. And so that this committee is really going to be important in helping brainstorm, listen to the Spirit, and see where we can go to continue to serve our community. If we want to grow, what moves into this community? Families, particularly young families. So we have to serve those young families. If we're really talking about wanting to serve and bring Christ's love into the community, let's serve our children, and really commit ourselves to that. So that's why there's a budget item, because we may need some money, depending on what we do in terms of looking into a K-5 program, but also just to support the other ministries. We're getting Children's Chapel rebooted next week. Do we need to purchase anything to help that? Bringing the nursery back online. I really think that knowing our community, if we want to really engage our community or immediate area, that feels like the place to have our adventure. I think that's something that everybody can rally around. So that's where we are with that.
Yeah, no, that's well put. I think everything's on the table. The expanded liturgical opportunities is another important thing to talk about. How do we relate to the modern worship desires of the community, right? As I said in my reflection, I am on record as being a great lover of the Episcopal liturgy. I will always be, but that conversation in the bar, I'm not saying I want to let go of Rite 1 or Rite 2 in some form, but does it look like what Kevin and I have talked about a little bit, a Saturday evening service that has, perhaps a little more contemporary feel to it. Maybe communion is once a month at that service rather than every week. And it becomes a different feel. Nick and I have talked a lot about the words both and, like not or, but both and. And so That's another thing that this committee is going to be looking into. Nobody knows how it's going to look, but it's for sure worth looking, especially, when we've laid out the financial times here.
Just one other note of realism. There's only so many of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our pledging units are down to 110 or whatever. And so we can have all these great ideas. We're going to have to be selective because we only have so much time and we only have so much energy and only have so much money. Mm-hmm. That's going to come down to the vestry, I think, to help give us some guidance and leadership about where do we discern the energy, where everybody's going to rally around this particular adventure and then grow from there. I'm a little bit concerned about the idea of we're going to do this and this and this and this and this. I just don't think there's enough people and energy to do that. So right away, early on, I think there's going to have to be a discernment process of where do we want to focus our energies. We've got a lot of really good things going on right now that's great and that's serving this community. And when I say this community, I mean the Grace community. And there is some great things that are happening with respect to outreach, but we need something that's going to rally everybody and be that catalyst for growth. And so we're going to be having those conversations. We're going to have to pick that one thing or two and go with it. We'll see. Yeah. No, it's and hopefully as we grow, maybe we can do more things. Exactly. So, but we've got to. We've got to grow, yeah. So I want to say one thing. I've joked around a lot about, a leadership transition, and Nick and I both love what we do. We love this place. We love what we do. We are here for you. I've been here for 50 years. Nick probably thinks he's been here for 50 years at this point. But this is our home, and we love doing this. And I wanted to say that. So. All right, so the next slide is the inevitable ending slide. Questions, we've had quite. I have a question. Polly, really? With the Carolina switch? Unbelievable. Wow, it was such a great meeting, just up until right then. Yeah. Any questions?
Thank both of you for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Don't forget Tuesday night,
Tuesday night.
right here.
Don't forget Wednesday.
I think the gross revenue was like 40, Mary would be the person. Like the food truck, you mean specifically? Well, just that event. I think we raised, Mary. Sam had a question that you're better equipped to answer than I do.
Right, I have something to present that I wanted to bring before today, but I didn't.
Okay. Thank you, by the way, for continuing